NATO is now prepared to shoot down Russian jets in preparation of war. That is according to new reports out just today. But why are they doing that at this time? Well, President Trump has said, shoot them out of the sky. Yeah, those are his words. But look at this right here, and this will give you an idea of where we're at and how close to a potential war we are. Because according to reports, this is not just going to be a regional conflict. This would be an all-out war if the United States is backing NATO, who we are members of, and NATO is opening fire on Russian jets. Look at this. It says NATO allies discuss letting pilots open fire on Russian aircraft. This is according to a report just today. I want to read a little of this to you. Look at this right here. It says, a NATO official told Newsweek, when it comes to the range of hybrid or gray zone activities we've seen, including cyber attacks, drone incursions, or attempts to sabotage critical infrastructure, NATO is working closely with allies to ensure that we're taking appropriate steps to ensure we can deter and defend. This isn't new, and we continue to adapt as the situation evolves. Okay, well, look at this. Why does this matter? Well, it says right here, NATO-Russia tensions are worsening as the war in Ukraine rages on, and there is an increasing risk of a direct conflict between Russia and NATO. One of the reasons why NATO is so concerned is because there's more people backing Ukraine, and with the chance that President Trump does agree and sends Tomahawk cruise missiles to NATO to then give to Ukraine, which who could potentially use on Russia, of course Russia's concerned. This is going to push them back. And we learned this just the other day. You can see it right here. It says Trump considered green light for Ukraine Tomahawks could push Russia back, according to the NATO minister. Now, this is still being discussed, that the United States could give pretty much, equip Ukraine with Tomahawk cruise missiles, which could strike deep within Russia, could strike Moscow. That's why the Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin are extremely concerned, and they say that they would have to pretty much retaliate. Anybody that is going to cause harm to Russia, they are going to cause harm to as well. It's going to be reciprocal. Yeah, that is very, very scary. But I want to keep reading this to you. Look at this. It says what to know. It says citing 4 unidentified NATO officials, said NATO allies are discussing a more forceful response to increasingly provocative Russian actions, including easing restrictions on pilots to allow them to open fire on Russian aircraft and deploying armed drones along the border with Russia. The asymmetric cost of scrambling fighter jets to intercept drones is a running concern for the alliance, which is seeking a financial sustainable solution. NATO members on the front line with Russia, backed by France and Britain, initiated the discussions, which have since broadened to a larger group in the 32-strong alliance, according to the newspaper. Says, one example of our work in this area is Baltic Sentry, which was launched in response to incidents affecting critical undersea infrastructure in the Baltic Sea. Yeah, I remember that last year. But listen to this. When President Trump was asked if he thinks NATO should shoot down Russian jets, well, listen to this.
That was a big day. That nobody thought a thing like that could happen. You had countries that weren't paying 2%, and now they're all paying 5%.
Now, this is what he's talking about, and I'm gonna get to what he's saying about the jets in a second. But he's saying that countries were originally paying 2%, now they're paying 5%. What the NATO countries have decided to do, and this was agreed on, I believe in June or July of this summer, where all the members agreed that they are, instead of spending the 2% of their GDP, they're going to spend 5% of their GDP to make their military stronger. So NATO is going to be stronger. But listen to this. This is what President Trump had to say.
Mr. President, do you think that NATO countries should shoot down Russian aircraft if they enter their airspace?
Yes, I do.
Mr. President, any update on your talks with President
Pretty
Putin? Do
simple.
you still trust him?
I'll let you know in about a month from now.
Would you back up NATO allies? You said that you thought that they should shoot down the Russian aircraft. Would you back them up? Would the United States help them out in some way?
Depends on the circumstance, but we're very strong toward NATO. NATO has stepped up. When they went from 2% to 5%, that was great unity.
Yeah. And back at from 2% to 5%. This is showing that they are helping out the United States. Because the United States now doesn't have to provide all the military equipment and weaponry to all these nations. They are stepping up. They're actually putting more money into their defense spending, which is great. And not only that, but President Trump talks about in this interview how a lot of these countries are now buying weapons from the United States. We're not just giving them away. Keep in mind when President Joe Biden was in office, he was giving this equipment away to Ukraine. Yeah, some of it we were selling when we had to, but initially we were just giving it to them. Pretty much loaning them this and not asking for anything in return. President Trump says, no, we are going to ask for something in return. They are going to buy all these items from us, which guess what? It makes us even stronger. That's what he's really referring to. I want to show you something else though. Look at this right here. It says, Russia's false flag claims spark fears of pre-war posturing. Now, what exactly does this mean? Well, let's read a little bit of this. It says, in a series of escalating statements, Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service has accused Western countries of plotting false flag operations to discredit Moscow. While the claims lack evidence, analysts warn they may reflect something more serious, an intensifying hybrid war strategy, and signs that the Kremlin is preparing the narrative ahead of a potential conflict with NATO. Okay, I want to read some of this to you. It says right here, the allegations, largely dismissed by Western officials as disinformation, had led some analysts to warn that the Kremlin may be laying the groundwork for a future escalation with NATO. Keep in mind what the Kremlin did back when they first invaded Ukraine. They put military equipment and troops on the border of Ukraine, saying that they were just there to do some tests. They were just running practices and trials. That was it. There was no concern. There's no harm. They had no plan on invading Ukraine. And then days later, they invaded Ukraine. Once they got all the military equipment, all the pieces in place, they invaded. And we knew that. They were just giving us information that we thought we wanted, but yet we knew the answer. We knew it was going to happen. Goes on to say, the SVR alleged on October 6th that the UK was recruiting Ukrainian agents to stage a maritime attack that would appear to have been carried out by Russia. Says the supposed plan including the use of Chinese equipment, which the SVR said was intended to implicate Beijing as well. The agency claimed the objectives were instructed to get arrested by Western authorities and then claim they had acted on orders from Moscow. That was one in a rapid series of accusations. Russia accused Polish intelligence on September 30th of working with Ukrainian agents to create a fake Russian Belarusian special forces unit aimed at attacking Polish infrastructure. A week earlier, the SVR claimed that NATO and EU officials were planning provocations in Moldova's pro-Russian breakaway region of Transnistria. So, yeah. Right now, there's a lot of concern that we are headed to war. And again, they're calling it pre-war signaling or phase 0. I want to read this to you as well. Look at this. It says, what is pre-war signaling? According to Washington-based Institution for the Study of War, Russia's recent war of accusations may signal that the Kremlin has entered what military analysts call phase 0. It's a stage marked by covert operations psychological warfare and disinformation that precedes open conflict. Now, some of the reasons why people are saying that Russia's doing this, and they're trying to make it difficult and pretty much just play with the minds of President Trump and other leaders of NATO nations. But they're spreading this potentially misinformation. Okay, they're giving us, they call it a false flag, but they're giving us this information, telling us different things, and they're just messing with us. Some say that this is what they did before. This is what they did before they invaded Ukraine. We've seen this several times. This is what Vladimir Putin does. Could this have been one of the reasons why Russia decided to enter into U.S. airspace, land in Alaska, and President Trump and President Vladimir Putin met, shook hands, walked the red carpet together, okay, had their little photo up? Could this have been one of the reasons why? Was Russia trying to signal to other nations that Russia and the United States are now friends? We're together? Him and President Trump are now allies? That we don't know. But what I can tell you right now is that there is so much talk of NATO potentially causing additional conflicts if they decide to shoot down Russian jets. Here's the thing. If they are talking about shooting down Russian jets, Russian aircraft, will Russia fly so close to NATO airspace that, again, maybe they don't enter, maybe they are so close, they're right on that line. The concern is if these NATO allies decide to hit a Russian jet, would that cause a war? Would that create this conflict? Would that be an escalation of war? That we're going to find out soon enough, because based off what we're hearing, Russia isn't done yet, and NATO is planning for a massive conflict. Some are saying this is probably why Pete Hegseth called in all the admirals and generals into Virginia a couple weeks ago, is because, and he told them to prepare for war. But the reason why he probably called them in is to get them all on board, because he knew something bigger was coming. So we'll see what happens in the very near future. But as of today, that is what we know. NATO is planning to shoot down Russian jets, and that is okay with President Trump. So we'll see what's going to happen. But as we get more information, I promise I'll bring you all the latest news and updates as soon as we get them. But as of today, that is what we know. So again, thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.